I stood there looking through the chain-link fence at the absolute picture of domestic bliss. My ex-girlfriend, Sarah, playing fetch in her ridiculously oversized suburban yard with a golden retriever who should, by all rights, have been tucked up on my sofa. That dog, my beautiful dopey $5,000 purebred golden retriever Leo, who I had paid for, trained, and loved since he was a 6-week-old fluffball, was now hers. She had stolen him, not just legally but morally, emotionally stolen him, and watching that scene felt like having my heart ripped out and used as a chew toy. She thought she had won. She thought the signed breakup agreement meant she owned my world, my constant companion, my fur child. But what she didn't know was that while she was planning her perfect, dog-filled life without me, I was planning a revenge so epic, so perfectly calibrated, that it would make her question every decision she had ever made. The question is, was I wrong to weaponize her own greed and desperation against her to get back what was mine? Tell me honestly, if your ex stole the one thing you loved more than life itself, would you have held back? Let me take you back to the beginning of this whole nightmare, because to understand the depths of my despair and the sweet, sweet taste of my eventual victory, you need to understand Leo. Leo wasn't just a dog. He was my anchor. I got him 3 years ago before I even met Sarah. I was working crushing hours trying to launch my own independent software design company. I was living alone in a tiny apartment fueled by coffee and sheer ambition. A friend convinced me that I needed a responsibility outside of work, something that demanded I step away from the screen, and that's how I found Leo. I drove 8 hours round trip to a reputable breeder and paid a small fortune because I wanted a healthy, well-adjusted dog. I remember holding him for the first time, this tiny, warm, floppy creature, and feeling a shift in my universe. From that day on, my life revolved around him. My morning run wasn't for fitness. It was for Leo. My evenings were spent teaching him tricks, cuddling on the floor and watching his hilarious attempts to chase his own tail. He was mine. Then Sarah came along. Sarah was initially everything I thought I wanted. She was vibrant, funny, and incredibly ambitious, almost mirroring my own drive. We met through a mutual friend at a startup networking event. We connected instantly over our shared goals and late-night work ethics. When she saw Leo for the first time, she melted. She played the part of the perfect dog mom almost immediately. She'd bring him expensive toys, sneak him treats under the table, and would always make a huge fuss over him. For the first year, it was idyllic. We moved in together. A big, beautiful house with a fenced-in yard, mainly for Leo, of course. Sarah started to become a little possessive of him, though. She'd often refer to him as our dog, which was technically true, but I started noticing how she'd strategically position herself in photos with him, making sure she was the one holding the leash during walks, and whenever friends came over, she'd dominate the story of how we got him, usually skipping over the 8-hour drive I took alone and the initial large payment I made. I brushed it off. I was in love, or at least I thought I was. I figured she just loved him too, and that was a good thing. The cracks in our relationship started appearing slowly, like hairline fractures in glass. She became increasingly controlling, not just over Leo, but over my time, my friends, and even my business decisions. Our arguments became more frequent, louder, and nastier. It became clear that we were fundamentally incompatible. She wanted a partner she could control, and I wanted a true equal partnership. The straw that broke the camel's back was, ironically, not about Leo, but about a client pitch. I had poured 3 months of my life into a huge project, and I was exhausted, but exhilarated. I secured the contract, a huge win for my company. I came home expecting a celebration, but instead I got a lecture about how I had neglected her and Leo for too long, and how my work was less important than her feelings. That night the fighting reached a fever pitch, and I finally said the words, "I think we need to break up." The breakup was messy, as most breakups are, but the custody battle over Leo turned it into a full-scale legal war. Since Leo was technically registered to the address we shared, and because she had built up this public image of being his primary caregiver, she dug her heels in. She hired a truly ruthless, high-powered lawyer who managed to paint me as an absentee owner obsessed with work, while portraying Sarah as the dedicated, loving caretaker. I presented receipts, vet bills, microchip registration, all in my name. But Sarah had photos, testimony from neighbors, who she had schmoozed endlessly, and a persuasive narrative. The judge, bless their soul, didn't want to rule on a dog custody battle and instead encouraged us to mediate. The mediation was a disaster. Sarah flat out refused to share custody, She wanted him exclusively. I offered 50-50, holidays, anything, but she was stone cold. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Leo deserves stability, and that stability is with me, not with some stressed-out tech bro who works 80 hours a week." That cut deep. Finally, after weeks of agonizing negotiation and thousands in legal fees, my lawyer advised me to sign an agreement. The agreement, which still makes me sick to my stomach, stated that Sarah would retain full ownership and physical custody of Leo, provided I was completely reimbursed for my initial $5,000 purchase price, plus half of all cumulative costs associated with Leo, food, vet visits, toys for the 3 years we were together. It was a humiliating offer, and the total payout was enormous, but she framed it as her buying me out of the financial interest I had in the dog. I signed it because I was emotionally gutted and financially drained, and honestly, my lawyer was convinced we would lose if we went to trial, given her manipulative evidence. I got a check, a hefty one, but it felt worthless. It was blood money. I signed it, I walked away, and I swore to myself that one day, somehow, she would regret what she did. I went home to an empty house. The silence was deafening. No happy thump of a tail against the floorboards. No wet nose nudge when I was trying to work. Just emptiness. The grief was overwhelming. I tried to move on. I threw myself back into work, but every time I came home, the void was there. I'd scroll through old pictures and videos, my chest aching. I knew I couldn't just take Leo back, that would be theft, and she'd have me locked up. So I started watching her, not in a creepy stalker way, but I kept tabs on her social media where she was, of course, posting endless pictures of her and her dog, Leo. She had moved into a big house in a swanky high-end neighborhood across town. She was flaunting her new life, her new boyfriend, and Leo, my dog, was the centerpiece of her perfect, curated existence. And that's when I saw the cracks in her facade. So that's the situation I was in. I had signed away my best friend, received a check that felt like a slap in the face, and now I was watching my ex live her best life, using my dog as a prop for her perfect Instagram feed. She thought she was safe. She thought the legal document protected her. She thought my heartbreak was her victory. But I knew something she didn't. Something that was the key to this whole mess. I knew Sarah's true toxic motivation, which wasn't love for Leo, but a desperate, calculating need to appear successful and, above all, to beat me. And this knowledge, combined with her new high-end lifestyle, became the fuel for my revenge. Before I tell you what happened next, what the epic, perfect plan was, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have just accepted the loss and moved on? Or would you have risked everything to get back the one companion who made your life whole? Seriously, drop your answer down below, because what I did next, well, it was borderline insane, but I had to do it. The key to my revenge lay in one simple fact. Sarah was obsessed with appearances and money. She wasn't just working. She was climbing the corporate ladder at a major old-school financial institution where image and discretion were paramount. Her new house, the designer clothes, the purebred dog, it was all about projecting success. The other critical piece of information I had was something she frequently complained about during our relationship. Her father, a wealthy but notoriously cheap and controlling man, owned the house she was living in. She paid him a token rent, but he held the title. This detail, which she had complained was humiliating, was my golden ticket. I didn't want to steal Leo. I wanted him back permanently, legally, and for her to suffer a profound public and financial loss in the process. The core of my plan was to exploit the one thing she valued more than Leo, more than me, more than anything: her impeccable, ruthless professional reputation. I started by using my software design skills. I created an extremely convincing but entirely fake website and series of social media profiles for a high-end, bespoke dog breeding and training service. The name was something sophisticated like Regal Canine Outfitters. The key detail: the website featured a photograph of a dog who looked remarkably similar to Leo, because it was Leo, an old high-resolution photo I had carefully edited. The site claimed to specialize in rare lineage golden retrievers and listed the price for one of these exclusive puppies at a staggering $15,000 to $20,000, along with a ridiculously long waiting list. The language was all about elite bloodlines and unmatched temperament. Next, I made an anonymous, detailed tip to the local animal control services regarding Sarah's house. The tip wasn't about mistreatment. It was about illegal, unlicensed breeding, claiming that the owner of the address was running a lucrative, unregistered puppy mill using a champion golden retriever. I knew animal control would show up, likely unannounced because that's their protocol for unregistered breeding complaints. Now here's where the trap sprung shut. The same day I knew animal control was scheduled to visit, I put the next stage of my plan into action. I had done my research and knew Sarah had a hugely important, career-making board meeting scheduled for the entire afternoon. I called her father, the house owner, using a burner phone and a deep, authoritative voice. I introduced myself as an investigator from the State Licensing Bureau. I told him in grave, serious tones that his rental property was under investigation for potential commercial fraud and illegal, tax-evading animal enterprise. I stressed that he, as the owner, was legally liable for all fines, which I casually mentioned could be in the hundreds of thousands, and that a formal inspection team was already on site. I told him he needed to get to the property immediately to sort this out before the police were called, and that the person running the scheme, his daughter Sarah, was actively obstructing the investigation. I even threw in a casual line about how this kind of thing could affect his own personal investment portfolio due to tax liens. The old man, terrified of losing money and terrified of a scandal, drove straight to the house, bypassing his daughter's calls. He arrived at the same time as Animal Control, who were already trying to talk to the house sitter Sarah had left in charge. When Sarah's father saw a uniformed Animal Control officer, a marked car, and a confused house sitter, the entire fabricated story instantly became real to him. He was furious. He immediately called Sarah's boss, a contact he had for professional reasons, and publicly ranted about his daughter's criminal activities using his property. Sarah, who was in the middle of her career-defining meeting, had her phone blowing up with calls from her father and then a chilling text from her boss telling her to handle this scandal now. When she raced home, she found the animal control officer looking skeptical but diligent, her father screaming about tax fraud and the whole neighborhood watching. Her pristine image was shattered. Now the final move. My lawyer, the one who told me to take the settlement, had been completely out of the loop until this moment. I instructed him to send a certified letter to Sarah's lawyer, the one who had so gleefully written the ownership agreement. The letter simply stated that, since Sarah's current use of the dog was now a matter of public record, and since she was in violation of several local ordinances, the illegal breeding complaint now being an open case, I was formally rescinding the original settlement and demanding immediate return of Leo, citing a clause in the agreement that dealt with illegal use of the property or potential harm to the dog's welfare. I didn't even need the clause to exist. I just needed the threat to be believable. The final, perfect blow came when I had my lawyer leak the existence of the Regal Canine Outfitters website, the supposed puppy prices, and the animal control complaint to the local neighborhood Facebook group, framing it as a public safety announcement. Sarah's reputation was destroyed in her neighborhood and, more importantly, at work. Her father, furious at the scandal and the potential legal and financial nightmare I had so expertly fabricated, gave her an ultimatum. Either the dog goes, or she's instantly evicted. He wasn't risking his assets over a dog, especially one being used in an alleged illegal scheme. Sarah, who had valued her social standing and her corporate career above all else, finally broke. She didn't call me. She called her lawyer. 2 days later, my lawyer called me. Sarah had agreed to nullify the entire settlement. She returned the $5,000 check, demanded back the half cost she had paid me, and signed a new, ironclad agreement relinquishing all claims to Leo, citing the need for the dog's welfare and stability in light of her current legal troubles. I didn't even have to break a single law, just exploit her paranoia and her father's greed. I picked up Leo the next day. He leaped into my arms, licking my face, the happiest, most heart-wrenching reunion I could have imagined. Sarah stood there, pale and defeated, surrounded by moving boxes. She didn't say a word, just stared at the ground. She lost the dog, she lost the money, she lost her standing with her father, and she eventually lost her job because the scandal was deemed a massive professional liability. She thought she was winning when she took Leo. She had no idea she was handing me the perfect weapon for her own epic downfall. Justice in this case wasn't just served. It was meticulously plated. So that's the end of the story. And Leo is back home, happy, healthy, and curled up right here next to me as I speak. The moral of the story, I suppose, is that sometimes the most epic revenge isn't about breaking the rules, but about understanding the person you're up against and using their own flaws against them. Sarah's downfall wasn't the fake breeding complaint. It was her desperate need to look wealthy and successful, even if it meant stealing my happiness and using my dog as a status symbol. I got my best friend back and she learned a very expensive, very public lesson about prioritizing greed over genuine love. Like this video if you were on my side, if you think she got exactly what she deserved. Subscribe for more stories like this where the petty goes epic. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. Did I go too far? Or was this the perfect dose of karma? I'll see you all in the next story.